workers that have organized themselves are not dependent on somebody up above. They are able to act independently. In UE, we are big believers in local autonomy. That's baked into our Constitution.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Carl Rosen is the general president of the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America, also known as the UE. President Rosen, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thank you very much, Jacob. It's great to be here. You've got a wonderful show. I'm glad to be part of it.
Glad to have you on. It's almost unbelievable that we've never asked you to be on before, considering we are both very big fans of the UE. We're students of history to a certain extent, and we love what the UE has stood for, since its formation in the 20th century. And I wanted to give you a little bit of space to talk about the UE, because it is a smaller union, even though it's had really explosive growth over the last 5 years, I think. And but it is still small enough that I think probably a lot of our listeners, even in the labor movement, are not familiar with the UE. It's not maybe a household name like the Teamsters are. And so can you talk to us about the UE, a little bit about its history and the workers that you represent?
Sure. Well, UE was an original CIO union from the 1930s. Our full name, indicates who we represented at that time: factory workers who made electrical parts, electrical machinery, huge electrical equipment, including locomotives, which is one of the few remaining plants we have from that era in Erie, Pennsylvania. But also radio equipment and a lot of machine shop workers, and that's why United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America. Most of those industries have left the country altogether. We also, had a long period there where much of the rest of the labor movement joined in with corporate America, and government officials and others in attacking our union and trying to destroy it throughout the McCarthy era, the late 40s into the 50s. There were 11 unions that tried to stand for what the CIO originally stood for in the 30s, in terms of an independent militant approach to unionism that held up the interests of the working class above those of the corporate class, and whether it was at home or internationally. And those 11 unions paid a huge price for that. 9 of them were destroyed. Only UE and the West Coast Longshore, the ILWU, survived that period amongst those unions. And we've tried to carry on since then. And I think a lot of folks in the labor movement look to UE as a source of inspiration for what a better labor movement could look like. They try to emulate some of the things that we do within their unions. And we have a lot of friends throughout the labor movement because of that. But, we became an independent union. We had left the CIO before it merged with the AFL. We've remained independent. We're independent of the AFL-CIO. We're independent of the Democratic Party or of any political party. We believe in charting a course and taking positions that are in the best interest of the working class and our members, of course. Because most of our industries have left, because of those original attacks, which took us from being the third largest union in the country at 600,000 members, rapidly in the course of a decade down to 120,000, and then with the plant closing epidemic of the 70s and 80s, we were down in the 30,000 and below, 20,000 and below range eventually. We started organizing in other industries because our industry was gone, and we've diversified, and our approach is to organize workers who want our kind of what we call them and us unionism. Others call class struggle unionism, and certainly rank and file unionism at its course, very, very proudly democratic approach to unionism. Folks who want to organize along those lines should join our union. And, we don't do restrictions based on particular industries at this point. But a lot of our organizing in recent years has been in the last couple of years, our very explosive growth you referred to has been amongst graduate workers who have been especially interested in our approach to organizing, which is harkening back to the way it was done in the 30s, which is workers to organize workers, not rely on a heavy staff run organizing drive, but trust the workers. If you give them the training, you give them the information, you give them the tools that they can go and self-organize, and that is a much more efficient way to do it, and also gives workers a union that's really their own. I think some unions are afraid to do it because union workers that have organized themselves are not dependent on somebody up above. They are able to act independently. In UE, that's great. We are big believers in local autonomy. That's baked into our Constitution.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
In other unions, not so much necessarily. So others haven't been quite as quick to jump onto it. But it is a similar model, obviously, that you saw across the Starbucks organizing to some extent. It was certainly what was there with the Amazon Labor Union and some attempts within Amazon. So there are others who recognize the value of it. It's our position that it's the only way that the labor movement is going to organize on the kind of scale that's needed to actually turn around the labor movement and turn around our country. So we are glad that we've been able to do that and bring in about 30,000 graduate workers into UE contracts over the last 3 years or so. We're having a convention the end of the summer in Chicago where we're going to be welcoming them all in as delegates on behalf of locals that are now fully established, their own elected officers, their own democratic constitutions, paying their share to help carry the union forward and do more organizing and expand further into other workplaces.
That's all really exciting, and you mentioned the history there, and how part of the dark history of the labor movement, and one of the real stains on the labor movement is that it went after unions like the UE, like the fur and leather workers, like Mine Mill here in Alabama. And UE was one of those that underwent those attacks, and I think that we are in a state of the labor movement that is a little bit more ecumenical. I was just at a convention where somebody was talking about how the carpenters are like off on their own, kind of being crazy a little bit. But generally speaking, I think most unions are a little bit more kind of congenial with one another. And so you might enjoy that I took the time when I was volunteering to support an IUE campaign to let one of the staffers know about that. The IUE does not really have a great origin story, being that its origin was to take away members from the UE. It was derisively called the Imitation UE, and so the staffer had no idea about the history, and ultimately that's not that important today. But I did take the time to let him know that his union does not have a super great origin story. But given the kind of a little bit more kind of congenial sort of state of the labor movement. You mentioned Starbucks Workers United. They're affiliated with the SEIU. The SEIU just reaffiliated with the AFL-CIO this year. Has their, but UE also obviously prides itself on its independence at this point. It was one of the, like you said, one of the two unions to not be destroyed by the other unions in the American labor movement. And so you pride yourself really on the independence of the UE. And so I'm curious if there have been any conversations within the UE about potentially reaffiliating with the AFL-CIO at this point.
There's nothing actively being discussed at this time. Certainly, it's a topic that comes up from time to time and has for decades. For a long time, we were told the only way we could reaffiliate was by joining into the IUE, and that was at the time that the IUE was really a corrupt company union. It wasn't much more than that. We certainly weren't going to do that. Fortunately, they've moved beyond that somewhat. Although they are no longer an independent union themselves. They've become an affiliate of CWA as they suffered, although they didn't suffer the raids that we suffered from the rest of the labor movement, they suffered the same plant closing epidemic that we did, obviously. So we have extremely good relations with a large number of unions at this point. We work very closely in coalitions that others have started, coalitions that we've jointly started, coalitions that we've helped lead at times. So the work that we want to do with other unions, we're able to do. We still have some differences with the outlook of the AFL-CIO that, I think would be a difficult conversation to have within UE in terms of moving towards an affiliation. I don't know that the argument is there that the pros outweigh the cons for us at this point, but it certainly is true that there's much more openness, to work with unions, whether they're in or out. And certainly if you look at some of the positions the AFL-CIO has taken now as compared to, during the Cold War era, et cetera, it's much more advanced. But, our being outside the AFL-CIO also allows us to do things that others can't do, and break some ground due to it, which then others do start to do themselves, and then it gets passed through the AFL-CIO, and maybe that's a good thing, that we're out here charting our own course that others can kind of look at and see if it makes sense or not for them.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.